Hello and welcome to another edition of Big Conversations with T. Adeyemo. Today we have David Shepherd, who is the MLA for Edmonton City Centre. He's also the Alberta NDP critic for health, primary and rural care. He joins us now to talk politics and more. Hello, MLA Shepherd. Happy New Year, sir.
Hello, T. It's wonderful to be here with you today.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much for doing this. I suppose we can just get right into it. It is hard to imagine an NDP without Rachel Notley, is it not?
Well, certainly Rachel has been the leader that has brought us where we are today. She was there to form government in 2015. She was the first Alberta NDP premier in the province. And I think the record of accomplishments of that time are pretty clear. You know, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, helping so many Albertans with their to be able to afford a better quality of living, cutting child poverty in half, one of the most ambitious climate leadership plans we had seen in Canada at that time. And not only that, I think just bringing in a truly ethical and principled government and leadership after, I think, many years of entitlement and arrogance from the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta. And I think for a lot of Albertans, it was the first time they really felt they saw a government that reflected who they were, their values, what they believe in, and what they wanted to see for our province. And certainly in our time as opposition, Rachel has been an incredible leader and helped bring us through, I think, some very difficult times and helped lead us, all of us as critics and everything, who helped support everybody in the province over the last 4 years. So, yeah, it's the party has been built to where we are because of Rachel's work. But we are moving now into that leadership race. You know, Rachel has decided that she wants to move on to other opportunities. So I think we have an incredible dynamic slate of MLAs. We're going to see some amazing people getting into this race who are going to be able to put forward a new vision for who we can be as the Alberta NDP, how we can truly build a government in this province that looks like the people that make up Alberta today, that truly represents the values of Albertans today. And I'm looking forward to being a very active part of that conversation.
MLA Shepherd, on two different grounds. I just feel slightly worried with when you talk about building an Alberta NDP that looks like us. I understand that you, Sharif, Rhiannon, you are black candidates. You know, we look alike, but I've attended also Rachel Notley's crusades and campaigns, and they're white. They're white. So I'm just wondering right now what the party is doing to drafting more people of color, to drafting perhaps more Indians, more Filipino, more Nigerians into the party. So the actual party itself is a little bit diverse. Your thoughts?
Absolutely, we have more work to do to truly ensure that we have a party as the Alberta NDP that welcomes everybody in. That is one of the opportunities we're going to have in this leadership race. I can tell you that myself and a lot of other folks are working very hard right now. Well, we have been working hard for years to do this outreach with a number of other cultural communities across the province and bring them in. And that is going to be a big focus, I think, of this leadership race, is going to be reaching out to folks in cultural communities, giving them the opportunity to take part in choosing who the next leader of the Alberta NDP is going to be. And I firmly believe that in that we need to be making a commitment in return that the voices of these communities are going to be heard in the room. Not only that they are represented in our caucus, but that they are represented in our party and that they are empowered to be able to speak, to bring their views forward. You know, we had a very open discussion on Saturday at our provincial council about the rules for the leadership race. And I can tell you, I and a number of other racialized MLAs spoke very passionately about the need to ensure that there were no barriers in place, or as low barriers as possible, for folks from Indigenous communities, from Black communities, from Punjabi and Sikh communities, from all cultural communities across this province to be able to participate in this leadership race. Because you're right, we truly need to make sure that our party represents who Alberta is today. And that means we need to make more room and give more opportunity.
Sorry, I'm muted. I like the way that sounds. But my question right now is Alberta ready for BIPOC Alberta NDP leader?
I believe we are. You know, Albertans are I think on the whole, very open-minded people. Let's be clear. Alberta is quickly becoming more and more diverse. The fact is, in 5 to 10 years, I think diverse communities are going to be the majority in the province of Alberta. You know, and I've had the opportunity in my work over the last 8 years. Yes, I've done a lot of work with Black communities. I've done a lot of work with other communities too. I've had the opportunity in my role as health critic to get to know many people in rural communities across the province of Alberta. I've sat down with municipal leaders from rural areas and from smaller municipalities to talk with them about their concerns about healthcare, about other issues. We've been able to build great relationships of mutual trust. I've talked with people who've had their own challenges accessing the healthcare system across the province of Alberta. And those folks, you know what? They are just looking for people that are willing to listen to them, people that are able to represent their voice and able to bring it forward, people who understand the issues and people who are going to represent their values. I think the time has come when we can have racialized leaders. And yes, I believe we can have a racialized leader of the Alberta NDP. Hey, once we did. We had Dr. Raj Panu, who served as the leader of the Alberta NDP, well-respected man. I think Albertans are ready to see racialized leaders of our political parties.
I hear you, the Albertans are ready. So talk to me about what your party has done. And I get you're in opposition. A lot of people come from India, Nigeria, the Philippines with overseas credentials, and they come here and they're blocked by institutional racism. And it feels like organizations, professional bodies just keep stalling the progress of people who come in to work in Alberta. And it's also part of racism, I think. So what has your party done so far? What do you plan to do so far with this very difficult problem that immigrants face?
Absolutely. There is real work that needs to be done to ensure that when people come to Canada, come to Alberta to build their lives here, they have the opportunity to practice their profession. They have the opportunity to get the credentialing they need and to get there as quickly as possible so that they can build a good life for themselves and, hey, contribute to our province in the best way that they can. So, of course, one of the things that I did in the last 4 years is I introduced the Antiracism Act, which is a bill focused on the collection of race-based data in all areas of purview of the government of Alberta. Because if we are not tracking the data, we cannot identify where the problems exist. So certainly we know anecdotally, both of us have spoken with many, many people from racialized communities who have come to Alberta who are struggling to be able to get through, to get credentialed, to be able to work in their chosen profession. So we know it exists, but having the data allows us to identify precisely where in the system those problems exist, as well as a lot of other areas where we know there continues to be systemic discrimination that affects these individuals here in our province, these people that just want to build a good life and contribute to our communities. Now, the UCP introduced a small piece of legislation in 2019 that they claimed was going to fix this. They created an office that they said was going to address this problem. The fact is, here we are 4.5, nearly 5 years later, very little has actually been done. Indeed, what we have now is all of a sudden another UCP MLA striking another bill to create another committee to look into the issue. So we are going to be advocating for actual work to get done for real change, and I've had great conversations with the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta, with other regulatory bodies to have the opportunity to sort of see where the work is being done. And I know that they are making some progress in terms of trying to speed up that credentialing process. We put out, I think, a great suite of proposals during the election on how we could speed up some of that process, providing more supports for folks to be able to get through some of the initial stages of credentialing, even providing some government support and financing, microloans, other things to sort of help people navigate that. So we are going to be continuing, I think, to press that conversation forward. And I imagine there's going to be more discussion of that during the leadership campaign.
Awesome. I'm just wondering, you mentioned collecting data. Is that what the Africa Center is doing too? Is that the sort of data you want to gather as a party for, as part of the anti-racism legislation you created? What happened to that, by the way?
So unfortunately, the bill that I introduced in the legislature, the UCP government, their MLAs at the time, voted not even to allow it to be debated in the legislature. They killed the bill. Right. They claimed that they were going to start a process to, look into it, and maybe 4 or 5 years down the road, they might get there. There has been no update from Minister Yassine or from anybody in the UCP government about their progress on that. That's certainly something we'll be pressing on. I don't know specifically what kind of data the Africa Center has been collected, but I know that others, the Africa Center, ASEC, even the Edmonton Public School Board, others have moved forward with the collection of some data in some areas. I know ASEC during the pandemic, for example, collected a bunch of data about the impacts of COVID-19, specifically on Black communities. Incredibly helpful and useful to have. But we could be doing it at such a broader scale. The Edmonton Public School Board is collecting some race-based data about their schools that's going to help identify where there's challenges for their students. My bill would have mandated that every school board in the province start working towards that process. There would have been an extensive process of consultation first with racialized communities, and particularly Indigenous communities, because we do have to respect their place of governance, self-governance, and ensure that any process put in place put them in control of their data. But after that, then we would have that opportunity in healthcare, in education, in the justice system to be collecting that data so we can identify the areas where there is discrimination and we can correct.
I'm just wondering, whilst I have you here, has there been any sort of plan to work across the aisle with your colleagues over the UCP on this anti-racism legislation, given how important it is to all Albertans?
Absolutely. We are open to working with the government to get good things done. It is essential that we get past division and partisanship. It is our job as the opposition to hold the government to account. And I will say, under this UCP government with Daniel Smith, there is a lot where we do need to hold them to account. But certainly where we can find paths to work together to get good things done, if they are willing to work with us on legislation, concrete legislation,
are they willing
for the collection of race-based data, I would absolutely support that.
Are they willing to work with you, sir? Is anyone
so far we have not seen that from the UCP. And indeed, when they chose to kill my bill in the legislature, it was with very derisive language. I'll say that. It was incredibly disrespectful from both the Premier, from then Minister Madhu. So there was not the indication at that time that they had any interest in working with us. But certainly, if there is a change of heart, if Minister Yassine or other MLAs within the UCP caucus or ministers are willing to sit down and have those conversations now, we will absolutely do so.
Okay. Someone is asking here, what happens after that data is collected? What actions will happen to stop racism? That lies the big question. Can we ever stop racism, actually?
So under the legislation did two things. Well, one of the first things it would have done is created an anti-racism office headed by an anti-racism commissioner. So that individual then would have conducted the consultation process to determine how the data should be collected, how the data would be used, and how it would be stored. Secondly, then that anti-racism commissioner would have worked with government departments around the collection of that data, and actually all public bodies. Once that data was collected, the anti-racism commissioner would have the opportunity to work with them to review that data, identify where issues were existing, and then the anti-racism commissioner would have the authority to be able to work with them to work to implement changes and review what steps have been taken. So that would be the process that would have been set up.
We have to leave anti-racism right there. Let's move on to other issues like healthcare. To improve accessibility, the provincial government introduced this thing where pharmacies begin to play a more prominent role in dispensing medicine. What are your thoughts on that?
So, pharmacists are an incredibly important part of our healthcare system. There's a lot of people that are involved in making healthcare work. And this is one of the challenges I think we've seen over the last 4 years under the UCP government, under subsequent health ministers and premiers, is that they fail to see that healthcare is a complex, interconnected ecosystem. There aren't parts of it that you can just carve off. You can't just make a little tweak here and not have it affect everything else. It is all linked together. Healthcare workers need to work together to provide good, comprehensive, quality care. Now, pharmacists are an incredibly important part of that. They play an important role in the community. They ensure that people can get the medications they need. They can check with them. They have a wide scope of practice here in Alberta. There's a lot of things pharmacists are able to do. They can renew your prescription. They can maybe even bring a new prescription forward for something that they can see that you need. However, pharmacists alone cannot provide comprehensive primary care. And what we have seen over the last 4 years is that the UCP government specifically attacked and undermined family doctors, which is the front line, the place where most people go, their first contact to get help with their health, help prevent them from developing further issues with chronic illnesses or other things, help identify things early, help keep them stable in the community. The UCP attacked that and undermined it. And ever since, they keep trying to bring in little bits of pieces here and there and try to put other people in place. But the fact is, the UCP has done nothing to actually repair the damage they've done to the most fundamental thing. So I absolutely support having pharmacists being able to provide the care to the full scope of their ability. But what we really need to see is investment in a team-based care where family doctors are supported to provide that care and work with the other partners along the way, whether that's nurse practitioners, whether that's pharmacists, whether that's a whole lot of other people who can contribute to that. But we don't need more silos of care, which is what the UCP seems to be doing with their promotion now of these pharmacist-led clinics, or with indeed their entire restructuring of the healthcare system, where they're carving things up into 4 different groups and 13 new boards and agencies. We need investment in integrated care where all of our care practitioners are working together.
Okay, so in an ideal world, what would Alberta NDP, do differently for healthcare? I know you've mentioned some, but in a nutshell, what would you do differently?
The most important thing to do right now is to get support to family physicians. Like I said, family doctors are in desperate straits right now. It is a crisis. Many family doctors, the ones that we have left, are on the verge of having to close their doors and close their clinics because the government undermined their ability to be able to provide care, their ability to be able to afford to keep their practices open over the last 4 years. So we have seen hundreds of doctors stop practicing, retire early, choose to leave the province, shut down, decide to go and work in other areas where they know they can make a steady income, where they can afford to live. So what we need to do is get immediate funding to help stabilize family doctors. And then from there, we need to sit down and actually follow through on building a new pay structure, one that incentivizes the kind of comprehensive care that we need, that supports them to be able to build teams of health professionals to work together. That, if we do that, then people are able to access care in the community. That takes pressure off our ERs. That means we start to ensure that we catch chronic illnesses and other things earlier, so it's not developing into issues that have to go to the ER and have to go to hospital. That is the fundamental foundation of the healthcare system and the most important step that the government could be taking today.
All right, thank you, sir. Given the recent security incident that happened at City Hall, would you consider that our politicians, you including, our politicians need a bit more security?
So certainly that was incredibly troubling, what we saw happen at City Hall. It's deeply concerning. I mean, it is part of the environment we live in, I think, where we unfortunately are seeing so much more polarization and division, and unfortunately individuals who, for their own political and financial gain, are spreading misinformation, are spreading lies about politicians, about policies, about the realities and the challenges that we face. And when that happens, then unfortunately, yes, we do get some individuals who take that very seriously. And if they are struggling with their mental health or with other things, then that can lead to incidents like this. So certainly, I know we have seen some changes at the legislature over the past years, where we've seen a heightened level of security and protection. Certainly, I know that our leaders of our political parties, whether it's the premier or whether it's the leader of the official opposition, they do have to be much more thoughtful about having security around them up to and leading into the election and even afterwards. It's something we have to think about more often now at the events we hold in community. It's regrettable, but I think there is a lot of work we can do as political leaders. We can choose not to feed into this kind of division and partisanship. And I think that's what Albertans want to see. I think people want to see leaders that are looking to bring people together, that are going to work to bring the facts to people, to speak the truth, and work to help us find ways we can work together across orders of government, between business and community. So many opportunities where we can work together to get good things done, bring down that political temperature, and bring some civility back to our discourse.
I agree. So let's move on to Black History Month. This is a time where most Black folks, including you, we overworked. You attend multiple events. So attending nearly every event that gets to you, sir, and we're grateful for what you do. But is there a way that we can integrate Black History Month as across the year, not necessarily just in February? Do you see maybe a need for incorporating the aims of Black History Month into the rest of the months of the year, not just in the one month where most BIPOC people, Black people, will work ourselves half to death talking about Black history? Your thoughts?
Absolutely. Black History Month is a wonderful thing to have that opportunity to talk about the historic and the current contributions, of Black Albertans, folks in our communities, what they have accomplished, what they have done, and hey, having that hope and optimism for what we can continue to build for the future. But absolutely, Black communities are doing this work all year round. Black leaders are stepping up. Black business owners are working. Folks are out in the community building new opportunities for folks here in our province. And, one of the things we did start working on when we were starting on the update of curriculum in the province of Alberta was a commitment to include Black history in Alberta's curriculum. So the history of Black Albertans as part of that story. So we did get a promise back from the UCP back in 2020 that they would continue that work. So it remains to be seen. The social studies curriculum is still under review due to, I think, how badly it was handled, unfortunately, by the government at the time. But we will be watching for that piece. The other thing I will say, T, is that for me, this is a commitment that does last year round. I don't just talk about Black Albertans and the Black stories and our Black history in February. I talk about it at every event I go to, because there are historic Black leaders in our province. There are, whether they're folks in the community or folks at higher levels in all kinds of places, who have done amazing things, who are inspiring figures, who have stories, I think, that can inspire us today, that provide perspectives on the issues that affect all of us. And I think that's the most important thing, the people whose stories get told are the people that get seen, that get heard, that get recognized. And I think we need to, as leaders, be telling the stories of more Albertans. So often we see from our government, and particularly this government, they want to tell one story. They want to tell one story about who they think Alberta is and who Albertans are. And we know it does not reflect who Albertans are today. It is my commitment in my role as an MLA and as an elected leader that I want to see the stories of all Albertans. I want to see us reflect the Alberta that we have today, because it's exciting, it's dynamic, and it's amazing what we have available to us here, the people in our communities who can help build our province going forward.
So talking about telling stories, I got a bone to chew generally. So let me just chew my bone right now. So what is your party doing for independent media? Maybe it's not even a bone to chew in supporting independent media to tell stories. Let's just segue into that as we talk about your legislative plans for 24. You didn't expect that question. What?
Well, what I can say, T, is I am here talking with you today. And you and I have had many conversations, right? You can say, I have always made myself available to anyone. And whether that's independent media, whether that's students doing projects in their schools, I firmly believe that the way we build better public engagement in politics is by making ourselves freely available to as many people and as many voices as possible. And we're going to have that opportunity, I think, over the next few months in the leadership race. Everybody that steps up, I think, needs to be having those conversations with as many folks as possible. We need to get back to the grassroots. Yes. We need to be supporting people, and especially today when we see the challenges that we're having in mainstream media and in all these other places, we need to be supporting good voices in our community who are speaking to people, giving them the opportunity to hear what is happening in our political sphere, what our politicians are doing, because the best check and balance on government is an engaged public. And indeed, I recognize that voices like yours are incredibly important in helping build and maintain that.
Okay, so here is the thing, though. I know right now you're in opposition. There's not much you can do. But what we as independent media will probably need to do is to work closely. So whoever becomes the leader of Alberta NDP when the race is called February 5th, we can ensure that there's something in there, not just talk, something other than just stuff for independent media. For most people, 4 weeks equals a paycheck, but for some of us, 4 weeks equals nothing. And it would be nice actually to engage how independent media can be empowered to do this important, so-called important anti-racism work. What do you think?
Well, again, I recognize the challenges of being an entrepreneur in a lot of different fields, right? I've been there. I've been self-employed, and I know the challenges that come with that. And certainly, we have seen some federal initiatives to try to support more media across the country. Of course, the challenges that come with that is when you're giving direct government money to media, that does become, there are questions that are raised, and we've seen by some, mostly folks on the further right, but questions about, about bias or other things that might come in when government is directly funding media. But what I can say is that, for myself, and I think my colleagues in the Alberta NDP, we believe that we should be building an environment where independent businesses in general can thrive. We need to look at the fact that more and more people are self-employed, either by choice or because of the advancement of the gig economy. So we need to be looking for better supports. How do we ensure that folks like yourself, who are independent business people, have access to be able to invest in a pension? Perhaps there is something we can find where there's public support for that. What are other things we can do to sort of provide means for you to be able to grow your business and be able to grow your footprint to do the important work that you do? So certainly, I think that's a conversation that we need to have. But certainly, the biggest thing we can do to support folks in independent media is to make ourselves available.
To be fair, I'd never considered the viewpoint that it'd be government empowering a media company. That would look a bit partisan. That's an interesting view, which I'd not considered previously until now. I got two more questions, sir, and we're done. Can you provide us an overview of your legislative objectives for 24?
So I think a few things. First of all, we've got a brand new budget coming out from the UCP government. That's going to be coming out at the end of February. And they have been holding off on a lot of very important things, saying, well, wait for the budget. And that includes things like real support for family doctors, that stabilization funding, and a new way to be able to ensure that they're going to be able to keep practicing and providing support for Albertans. There are real challenges right now around childcare. We're seeing rolling closures in the province because the UCP government has done a bad job of managing the federal funding that's been provided and leaving childcare providers feeling that they're in desperate straits. We have real concerns right now around water and drought in the province of Alberta, as we're seeing a very dry winter. So we have real concerns about how the UCP is going to step forward to support folks, especially when they continue to advance things like coal mining in the Eastern Slope. So we have some real discussion we need to have around their environmental record and how they intend to go going forward. We have seen, in the soaring utility rates, real concerns around electricity as the UCP government has failed to step up for Albertans to be able to make sure that we are not gouging folks when it comes to utilities, that we have proper regulation of our electricity system. And indeed, just the other weekend, we saw ourselves come up to the brink of potential rolling blackouts across the province, again, because of, I think, mismanagement. So there are a number of things that we are going to be looking at very closely. But certainly, again, one of the big things for me is going to be, as we enter into this leadership race, being a very active part of that conversation about how we engage with Albertans, how we welcome them in to our party, to work with us, to have their voice heard, to empower them, to be partners with us in how we build our vision for this province going forward, to ensure that in 2027, we have an opportunity for them to vote for a government that looks like them, that truly represents who they are and their values. And I firmly believe that's the Alberta NDP.
And I genuinely hope your Donna won't be upset with me if I ask you this question. What are the hurdles you think the next leader faces as we walk towards the 2027 campaign? I'm sorry, Donna.
No, that's fine. I think one of the challenges we face with the Alberta NDP is that we still need to fundamentally earn trust with a lot of Albertans. In this past election, when it came down to it, people looked at the ballot. In a lot of key places where we needed our people's support, they looked at the ballot, and when they looked between the Alberta NDP and Daniel Smith and the UCP, they went with the UCP. So we have some work to do over the next 3 years to build that relationship of trust. We need to be on the ground with people in their communities, talking with them about the issues that they are concerned about. But not only that, we need to give them a clear story, a clear vision of who we are. Because as I said, I truly believe our caucus right now, its diversity, both in terms of background, in terms of skill sets, in terms of expertise, in terms of political views, represents who Albertans are today. The values that we hold as a party, I fundamentally believe, are in line with the vast majority of Albertans. You know, when you talk to Albertans, you ask them, they will reflexively tell you, if you ask them, where are you in the political spectrum? They'll say, I'm conservative. But if you actually look at polling on issues, if you go issue by issue, or even on fundamental values, on whether we should be working on things together or whether it should be a more individualist approach, Albertans fall squarely in the center and even a little bit left. We need to tell that story. We need to talk to Albertans about who they are and show them that who we are reflects who they are and their values.
MLA Shepherd, I've known you a little while, maybe since 2019 when I first moved into the city. And I'm just really curious now. This is not a political question. May I ask what gives you hope? What do you do for your mental health? Because it doesn't appear like you stop. Like it would seem like you're always working.
What gives me hope, T, are the Albertans folks I talk to in the community every day.
All right.
You know, this is tough work. And I'll tell you, over the last 4 years, being the health critic, you know, doing a press conference every day, some days, you know, being up against, you know, a government that was arrogant and entitled and doing real harm in our communities and to Albertans. Yeah, that is exhausting work. But, you know, when I get the emails from frontline healthcare workers who say, thank you for standing up and fighting for us, we feel like somebody is at least hearing us and representing our voice. When I talk to Black youth in the streets, right? When I stop by university campus and I hear from Black students that they say, you know what, it meant so much to me when you came and talked to my class. To see that you are there and you're representing our voice, it gives me hope that maybe someday I can be a leader in our community too. You know, when I talk to the seniors who say, you know, I'm so concerned about my CPP and what this government is going to do, but it means so much to me that you and your colleagues are standing up and fighting and pushing back. And when we see the impact we make, hey, we did slow the government down. We stopped them from coal mining in the Eastern Slopes, even though they're trying to bring that back again. We stopped them from selling off parks, even though it seems they want to explore that again. That is why I do this, because I believe change is possible. And when I see folks coming together, when I see the hope in their eyes, when I see the possibilities that lie in front of us with this leadership race and that opportunity to refresh and define our voice as a party again for the next election, that's what keeps me going.
That's beautiful. Well said, David Shepherd. You are the MLA for Edmonton City Centre. And you're also Alberta NDP critic for health, primary and rural care. Thank you so very much for your time. So I'm really grateful for you taking the time.
Thank you for having me, T.
All right, then. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you join us same time tomorrow as we have MLA Sharif Aji here with some more questions. Please enjoy the rest of your morning. Goodbye.